Hello, this is Debbie Hughes from Lime Design, and in today's video I'm adding a few touches to some die cuts to dress them up a little. The supplies I use in my videos are always listed in the description, and there's a link to the coordinating blog post too. Today's blog post is part of a blog hop, so please pop on over to my blog if you want to take part in that. Okay, onto the card, and for this one I actually broke out my Copic markers to mix things up a little. You all know I love my watercolours, but it's always good to do something different from time to time so you don't end up in a rut. The key elements to this card are both dies, the Chunky Hearts panel and the Turtle Dove sets from Simon Says Stamp. I started with a background for this card and ink blended cotton candy and apricot dye inks. Dye inks take a lighter hand and more gentle blending than, for example, Distress Oxide inks. However, if your ink blending is not perfect, it doesn't matter on this piece because by the time I finish splattering and then die cutting, any errors are easily covered up. The other thing to note about dye inks is that they go down a little darker and then they soak into the card, smooth out and lighten. So especially with cotton candy, which is quite a light ink already, I made sure to get a good amount of colour down to account for these changes. Next I added splatter with Perfect Pearls powder followed by white gouache. These splatters are opaque and show up over the ink blending. For this card I concentrated the splatter over the darker apricot area and moving up over the cotton candy, but then trying to keep the splatter minimal over the white area as I found that splatter over white just tends to look a bit grubby. I set the background panel aside to dry while I cut the Turtle Dove dies from Neenah Solar White card in the 80-pound weight. The dies cut each part of the dove separately, and so I was very careful to pick out all the pieces and keep them together. I used a Marvy jewel picker to help me do this. Some of the pieces are tiny, and to keep them still while I coloured, I added a stripe of glue runner along the edge of a piece of scrap card and popped the die cuts onto that. I kept the Copic colouring very simple. On some pieces just one colour, and the most I used was on the birds where I used 3 markers, I think it was. I placed the caps of the markers to the side so you can see which colours I used. I'll play a little music while I colour and I'll be back shortly to finish off the card. I made the boy bird, which will sit on the right of the card, slightly darker than the girl. However, I have no idea what colour a boy versus girl turtle dove should be, to be honest. I used little scraps of white card on the back of the birds in order to anchor the loose parts, such as the beaks and cheeks, and then more glue runner along the base of the bird in which to add the legs. You could add the turtle doves directly to the ink blended panel, however I wanted to add more detail to the background to fit with the Loving Birds theme, and so I took the Chunky Hearts panel and ran it through with the ink blended piece. When I removed the die cut hearts, I was very careful to keep them in the order they were originally, so that when I piece this back together later on, then all the colour gradients will match. I added Derice foam strips to the back of the die cut panel and then added it to a card base cut and scored from Neenah Neenah Solar White card in the £110 weight. I then added Ranger Multimedia Matte to the hearts, gently rubbing a little or light coating on with my finger before dunking them into Tim Holtz Rock Candy Distress Glitter. I then added foam squares in the heart windows before piecing back in the glittery hearts into the gaps. You could add a double layer foam to really make the hearts pop, but I was after subtle detail rather than something more dramatic. I used a red R39 marker to colour a piece of scrap card and then made sure it was fully dry before running it through with the Strips 2 dies. If the card isn't dry, it will stick inside the die. The width of the smaller dies in the Strips 2 dies are perfect for skinny sentiment strips. I mean, I don't have to try and cut them out with parallel lines. Any form of straight line is a challenge to me. I took a little sentiment from the We Believe set, whose quirky style fitted with the turtle doves. I treated the red die cut piece with anti-static powder and stamped the greeting in Clear Embossing Ink before sprinkling with white embossing powder and heat setting. I used a Tim Holtz craft knife and ruler to trim off the ends. I'd already added foam adhesive to the back of the birds. I also now added it to the greenery sprig and added it to the top centre of the card, followed by the bow kept in place with Ranger Multimedia Matte. I used a T-square ruler to help me align the sentiment strip on straight, and then finally added the turtle doves. I again used Ranger Multimedia Matte to add the teeny tiny hearts to the card. As a final touch to the birds, I added white gel pen dots to the breasts and accented the die cut detail on the wings. And that completes his card using ink blending, glitter, colouring, heat embossing and white gel pen details to dress up the die cuts on this cute Christmas card. As I mentioned, I'll leave links in the YouTube description to the products that I've used today, as well as a coordinating link to the blog post over at limediddesign.com. And don't forget to pop on over there to take part in the blog hop. I want to thank you for joining me, and if you've enjoyed this tutorial, I'd be delighted if you'd give it a thumbs up and to subscribe to this channel. Also, if you'd like to get notified when a new video is out, don't forget to hit the bell button next to the subscribe button too. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.